Hello everyone, I'm super happy to be with you today. My name is Valentin, I work for Google Cloud in Paris, France. And as all speakers, I have a quick poll for you before we begin. So, who in this room already knows what a Bloom filter is? Not quite half of the room, but still quite a few people. Who in this room doesn't know what a Bloom filter is? Almost half of the room, which means that some of you are in some kind of quantic state, which is fine. I love probabilistic machines. So, a definition. The formal definition of a Bloom filter is a bit terse. This is exactly why I decided to give this talk today, because the concept is actually quite exciting. Basically, a Bloom filter is a way to implement a set in a compact data structure using very little memory. It can be useful if the memory is constrained. Think of embedded devices, or when elements can be numerous or arbitrarily large. So in computer science, a set is an abstract container type. It can store only unique values and without any particular order. So you will probably find a set implementation in the standard library of your favorite language, except in Go, because Go wants to be special. So this is very, very basic stuff that everyone knows from their daily job or from the university. It's not supposed to contain any duplicates, and as it's a container, it's really supposed to contain its elements. You can add elements, you can remove elements, you can open the container to list the elements, and the size of the structure is proportional to the sum of the elements that are inside. So proportional to the number of elements and the size of the elements. Yes, I forgot to say a very important primitive. You can check if an element is in the set. If you know about an element, you can ask, is it in the set or not? So, when I say elements, I mean data. And when I say data, I mean a sequence of bytes or maybe sequence of bits. To determine if a specific element is in the set or not, this is the membership testing. A naive algorithm would check all of the elements in the container and take a running time proportional to the size of the whole set. However, actual implementations are much more efficient than that. Under the hood, they can use either a binary tree, resulting in a search operation whose cost in runtime is proportional to the logarithm of the number of elements. And for this, we must have a total ordering. We must know how to compare any two elements to determine which one is the smaller. Or they can use a hash table, resulting in a search operation that is constant time on average. For this, we have to know how to hash an arbitrary element. So hashing something is taking a digest, a binary digest of something. But you already know all of that. Good news, binary data is always easily comparable and hashable. It's always possible to come up with a data structure optimized for searching. As I mentioned earlier, our challenge today is to deal with very constrained memory. What can we do about it? A Bloom filter is a special version of a set which doesn't actually contain the elements, but rather remembers a trace of the elements. It has a reduced list of features. You can only add elements and then test if the element is contained. It's not possible to remove an element, and it's not possible to list the elements because the elements themselves are not stored. Testing if an element is in the set consists in providing the element, which is binary data, and getting the result, which can be false. This element is not in the set, or maybe this element might be in the set. Here is what a Bloom filter looks like at the beginning, when only a few elements have been added. So the Bloom filter itself, it looks like a bit set. It is a bit set. When tested for elements, is it there or not? It most often answers, no, I've never seen this object before. Now, here is what a Bloom filter looks like when a lot of elements have been added. When tested for membership, most of the time it will answer, yes, I may have seen such an object, but I can't be sure. Of course, the goal is to be as relevant as possible. As we've seen, when the answer is no, we are sure that it's a categorical no. There is a 0% chance of saying no by mistake. However, when the answer is maybe, there is a probability P that the element has actually never been seen before. So it's a false positive. I answer maybe, but actually it's not in the set, I've not seen it. So there's a probability 1 minus P that the element is indeed in the set. That is a true positive probability. What we want to minimize is P, and everything else will follow. P is not a constant though. It tends to increase when elements are added to the set. In the bit set, we only flip some bits to 1 over time, never back to 0. In this picture, the blank white cells are zeros arbitrarily, and the black cells are 1. So what we are doing, it's like with a pencil, we just check some boxes. Adding one element effectively sets some bits to value 1. With one hash function, you would hash the binary value of the element you're adding, let's say a guitar or any binary representation of a guitar, and flip the bit. So you hash the guitar, you get a number, and this is a value I, and you would flip the bit at position I. You would set it to 1. This assumes that the hash function maps uniformly between 0 in the top left corner and n in the bottom right corner, the number of bits of the bin set. So what we assume is that it maps uniformly in that space. That's what hash functions do anyway. So the bit set structure, it becomes really powerful when you combine several hash functions and flip several bits to 1 for each new element. So as you can see here, I think it's an interesting picture. I'm adding an element, and I will run 4 hash functions on the element, resulting in 4-bit position, and I will set all of them to true. And that's what makes this data structure so powerful. I will explain. So of course, collision will occur. Some of these bits may already be 1s, but that's okay. Several elements overwriting the same bits are not destroying each other, because the new value is always 1. The membership test is now, let's compute several hashes of an element that we'd like to ask the question, is the guitar in the set or not? If all of the hash bit positions are set to 1, then there's a high probability that the element is indeed in the set. And if at least one of these bits, of the red bits here, is 0, then I'm sure that this element cannot be in the set. How many hash functions should I use? Does this mean that the more hash function we use, the better the results? Not really, because if you have more hashes, then it implies flipping more bits for each element and filling up the bit set more quickly, making it completely black, turning it useless in practice. It's a trade-off between too few hash functions and too many. So there must be some kind of optimum. And indeed, there is a formula to compute the optimal number of hash functions, that's value k, depending on the number of elements and the size of the bit set. The constant factor log 2 here is not important, so let's put it this way. On the one hand, if you have a lot of space in your bit set, if you have a lot of bits, then you would like to have more hash functions to be resilient to partial collisions. And on the other hand, if you're adding a lot of elements to the set, then you would like to have less hash functions to minimize the number of collisions. So the optimal is actually proportional to the number of bits you have divided by the number of elements that you're expected to add. It's not a dynamic value, the K. You have to decide it before creating the Bloom filter, obviously. So this is a trade-off between three values in order to minimize the probability P of false positive. There can be other trade-offs, such as the cost of computation of all the hashes. Cartoon. We have 6 minutes left, so I can tell my little stories. This is not scripted, but something happened 2 months ago. I got an email saying I was accepted for a quickie here, so good news, yay. And also to show a cartoon, and that's very fun, yay. And that the bad news was that I had to actually make a cartoon, and it is really hard and painful. So I started immediately to procrastinate. And much later, really much later, did I do the actual cartoon. So please forgive the graphics and please forgive my skills in animating SVG and PNG in the HTML DOM. It's not my primary skills and it's a mess, but I did it. So let's watch. This is a nightclub, and the receptionist has a Bloom filter. It's a color card which helps her remember the color of the clothes of the customers who has entered the nightclub today. So for each person that enters, she will check in the color card the color of their shirt and the color of their trousers and the color of their shoes. So let's watch what happens when customers come in. She says welcome, and then she checks some boxes. Can we see that? Oh no, I'm not in the right window, sorry. Okay, folks come in, she says welcome, and for each, I don't know if we see very clearly, but she actually checks the color that she's seen. Okay, so in this hypothetical imaginary world, color of shirts and trousers are really good hash functions. Like there are like 200 different colors, and all people tend to have a random color, which is obviously not the right word, but it's just an illustration. So let's pretend that colors of the clothes is a really good hash function, and here it's actually 3 hash functions. So for each people who came in, for each person, she checked 3 boxes. Then something happens. The police calls. The police says there was a robbery in the neighborhood, and we have a description of the suspect. The suspect wears this color, this exact color, and this exact color. So over the phone, the police says the exact outfit of the suspect. So the receptionist can check if this person might be in the nightclub or not. Here she saw that all the boxes for this set of 3 colors weren't checked, so she's absolutely sure that even if she has 500 or 600 people in the room, that suspect cannot be in the room. So it's a true negative. And there are no false negative. Now let's see another scenario. The police is ringing and once again gives the description of a suspect by his colors. And this time she says, yes, we might have this person or somebody dressed like him or just several people having together the same colors. We can't be sure, but she says to the policeman, you can come and find a suspect. And here it was a true positive because someone with these colors was actually in the room. So the policeman found them. And then the last possibility is that the police found for the robbery, always the same scenario. And this time she says, yes, I've seen this color, please come over, but I can't be sure you will find someone in the room. And as I mentioned, if other people had similar colors in their shoes or shirt or whatever, she might have already checked the boxes, even if there was no one to find that matches the description of the suspect. And I think that's it. We might have 1 minute left. So I'll make up something mind-blowing, like, do you know that we are Bloom filters? If I see during this conference since Monday, I've seen 3 times in the back of the room someone with a very, very big pink hat, and I've seen that 3 times. And then my friend tells me, hey, did you see that guy with a really big pink hat? And I say, yes, what's up with that guy? It's such a special outfit. Actually, I'm saying yes, but what I mean is, yeah, I saw someone like that, and I assumed 3 times that this was the same person, but I can't be sure it was the same guy every time, and I can't be sure it's the same person that my friend is talking about. So even in real life, we're full of Bloom filters. Thank you very much for listening to me.